it's my pleasure to introduce an award-winning author. This is Lily Hills, all the way from Carmel this morning. Yay.
Well, ladies, first of all, I just want to say thank you so much for taking the time to come and be here with me today. It is always so inspiring to me to know that women are taking time out for themselves to regroup, to learn something more about themselves so they can use it in their day-to-day lives so they can be less stressful, more joyful, and bring more presence to every single day. And this is one of my absolute favorite topics to talk about, the feminine as a force for greatness in your life personally, professionally, and as a means of social evolution. Because the feminine is a topic that we really haven't explored to its full potential yet. And truly, I believe in the depths of my being that when we have more feminine coming through in ourselves, the men in the world, and also our leaders, it's going to be a game changer. But it starts with us ladies and the gentlemen brave and wise enough to join us. So we're going to be talking today about soft power, which is a term coined by Joseph Nye from Harvard University, and basically talking about the ascendant qualities of the feminine in both men and in women. And we can't have a conversation about the feminine in all of its glory without talking about the masculine in all of its glory as well. Both of them are equally valuable parts of who we are. So we're going to be exploring both of those sides because the whole goal is to have integration between the two, because that's when your days feel the most centered and peaceful, and as I said earlier, you can have more presence. You can have more of those now experiences that make every day more joyful. So, Lana, if you would please. So we've all been exposed to this ancient symbol, which describes how opposite forces are interconnected, and mutually dependent, and harmony is only achieved when the two are in balance. So, do you know those days when you feel like it was a magical day? You checked a bunch of things off your to-do list, because I know we all like to do that. We like to have our list written out and check. Those days, but you also flow within your day. You feel present with your coworkers. You feel like you're really connecting with your clients, or you feel like you're connecting with your children, or your spouse, or your loved ones. That is the combination of the masculine and the feminine in action. So instead of powering through your days, which we all know what that feels like, those stressful days where, yeah, you're checking things off your list, but you feel a little panicky all day long, you've got that heart that's beating a little faster, and you never feel fully relaxed. That shows where there's a little bit of an imbalance between the masculine and feminine energies. So, when it comes to masculine and feminine, for the purposes of this presentation, and actually, the truth is, masculine does not refer exclusively to men any more than the feminine refers exclusively to women. They're the unique qualities more commonly affiliated with each gender. But of course, all of us have both a masculine and feminine side. So we're going to dig a little bit deeper into this, because once we take our understanding of the feminine to a higher level, we learn something about ourselves that allows us to bring that into our daily life. So the feminine, part of the reason we don't talk about it that much, we've all heard the idea of the feminine, but it's a social construct. So everybody's got a slightly different idea of what masculine and feminine represents. Varying descriptions, not only personally, but culturally. But the feminine is seen as weak to some men and to some women, which is really somewhat of a tragedy, because the feminine in its full definition is incredibly powerful. It's one of the most powerful aspects of who you are, especially as a woman. And sometimes it's seen as the behaviors that we women exhibit when we're not in our power place. So the times when we're feeling badly about ourselves, when we're feeling not good enough, when we're feeling like we're not truly in a good place, we'll behave in ways to other women and men, and oftentimes that's affiliated with the feminine. So in some circles, the feminine's gotten a bad rap. I had one gal who came to one of my seminars say, I've always thought of the feminine before now as frilly and dainty. That was her whole perception of the feminine, right? And I've had gentlemen say that, well, actually, one fellow, I was at a dinner party one night, and I said to him, gee, you've got a really, really extraordinary feminine side, you know, was complimenting him, right? And he looked at me and he goes, well, it's a really masculine feminine side. Ah, okay. Which, the thing that I found interesting about that, part of me laughed because I thought it was, you know, I could see where he was coming from given my experience with the feminine. Simultaneously, I felt sadness that someone sees feminine as bad, as weak, as less than. So this comic, when I saw it, of course, I had to bring it because I thought it was so comical. For those of you who are listening at home, it's a picture of a man and a woman on a couch, and he's saying, I don't want to get in touch with my feminine side, that's why I married you, he says to his wife. So again, that misperception that the feminine is not something that is actually transformational in nature. The books that I wrote is called A Feminine Manifesto, and I wrote it with my best friend from high school, and here we are. That's our freshman year. I'm hiding the braces, full set. But we recognized that the feminine was not something that was being talked about, and we are so passionate about it because of the role it's played in changing our lives. So little did we guess when we were in one of those Woolworth booths. Yeah. This is the picture we're taking if we'd be writing a feminine manifesto 34 years later. So she is still my best friend and one of the funniest human beings on the planet. And Lana, if you'd forward, there she is in all her red-headed glory. She is an absolute love of a human being. So I feel blessed to have her in my life because as we all know, female friendships, absolutely transformational in terms of the quality of your life. So we started writing a feminine manifesto. We were walking by the Golden Gate Bridge. She was here visiting. She lives in Pacific Grove, butterfly capital of the world. So we're walking along, and we were talking about our lives. Now, our lives have been extraordinary. We feel unbelievably blessed. Amazing people, wonderful experiences. She's got two extraordinary children. We've had amazing, amazing times together. And we've had some tremendous hardship as well. We've had deaths of loved ones, and we've had financial duress, and we've had addiction issues, and we've had challenges within our families that made those years incredibly challenging. But what we were talking about as we were walking along by the Golden Gate Bridge is how our feminine side helped us to move beyond those challenges without coming out bitter, without coming out disempowered or depressed or feeling totally hopeless. So that's what got us all excited about, okay, these are some things that we want to write down to support other women. So then we started getting into doing radio shows together. One of ours was called the Goddess to Goddess Empower Hour, inspirational information for women and the divine dudes that love them, because the men out there, when they heard it was called the Goddess to Goddess Empower Hour, they were like, hold on now, where's the room for us guys? They didn't want to be left out. So divine dudes we thought was kind of a fun compliment to that. So I want to go back to the time when I started having challenges of my own. I'm not going to take it back to the very beginning. If I did, it would look like this. This is me when I was a really little girl. But it really wasn't until my senior year in high school that I had the larger challenges. Karen was my best friend. We were having so much fun. Her mom said, you guys laughed your way through high school, which we absolutely did. But when my senior year in high school, I was going on a date with a college freshman at Santa Clara University, and he was taking me to the beach. And Santa Clara is actually my alma mater. So I was totally excited. He was adorable, taking me to the beach. I'm going to go get a swimsuit. So I went to the Limited, and I don't know if any of you remember the Limited. Remember the Limited stores? I used to work there during my summers. So I go to the Limited, and I find this adorable little one piece. It's this rainbow suit. I take it off the rack, and I go in and I try it on. And I can remember standing there in the mirror in the dressing room and looking at my body and saying, oh my God, you've got cellulite. And having literally my first negative body thought in my entire life, 18 years old. And I panicked a little bit. My thoughts went to, oh my gosh, I'm going to end up, I'm going on this date. I don't want him to look at my body and think that I'm not attractive, you know, the mind of an 18-year-old. So I went on my very first diet. I didn't know how to cook, and my mother wasn't really big on letting myself or my 3 sisters in the kitchen. So I went on an all-vegetable diet, and it was all canned food. So dump it in. That's what I ate for 3 days straight. Nothing but canned vegetables. that was my first diet, and I can't even begin to tell you how frustrated I felt, even in that experience. My very first diet was so limiting that all I could think about was the date being over. I couldn't wait for that date to be over because all I wanted to do was eat again. So I went on the date. I did lose a few pounds, I'm sure. Went on the date. I literally came home and I had my first binge experience where big pizza, ice cream, I ate and ate and ate until I couldn't eat anymore. So that first experience set me off for 12 years of a disconnected relationship with my body, where I'd go up 50 pounds, down 50 pounds, all through college. My entire college experience was colored by the fact that as much as I wanted to be living at my natural and healthiest weight, I could not control my appetite. And then it spiraled even further out of control because one of my girlfriends, my freshman year, we had just polished off a extra large pizza studying for a test. And I told her, oh my God, I feel terrible. I feel like I'm sick. And I said, and I'm gonna feel even worse tomorrow because I ate all of this. And she was a very sweet girl, happens to also still be a good friend of mine. And she literally took me by the hand and took me into the girls' bathroom at the dorm that we both lived in. And we both went into separate stalls. And she taught me for the first time how to make myself sick. And it was horrible, absolutely horrible. And I thought, how can she do that? That is terrible, that poor thing. Well, desperation and that voice in my head that kept telling me to eat and then beating up on me afterwards, that's the one I was listening to. So for all of those years at Santa Clara University and for 12 years, I was bulimic. I had such a disconnected relationship with my body that I couldn't stop myself from eating, even though I wanted to more than winning the Nobel Peace Prize. So what that led me to have a deeper understanding of course, our largest, most challenging experiences are the ones that make us go within, that make us start to study our lives. If we're smart, if we slow down long enough to really evaluate where our lives are going. And my desperation level was so high, I was on the path of personal growth. I needed to figure out how I could possibly stop this. But there was so much shame there. It's amazing. One negative body thought and one diet created that much shame and distrust of myself and anxiety and misery. That's why I am the big anti-diet fanatic and why I wrote my other book, The Body Love Manual, How to Love the Body You Have as you create the body you want. It's a non-diet approach to losing weight by connecting with the genius of your own body. So here was me at actually it was someone else's senior ball, and it's so funny, one of my girlfriends, everyone has a different experience to seeing me at a different weight. One of my girlfriends burst into laughter. She goes, you look so scared there, it's so not you. And other people have gone, oh, bless your heart, because they can see that there were struggles going on there. But I wouldn't trade it in because those experiences contributed to where I am today, which is free of an addiction from food, completely free. I never think about food unless I'm truly hungry, and that feels like a miracle, because I couldn't go 2 seconds without thinking about food. So now I also have the only wellness program in the country that focuses on the mental side of weight loss, getting your mind on your team, because everyone knows we should be exercising and eating right. But if your mind's not on your team, which is really hard to do without training, it's almost impossible. So the distinction that I was able to make at the time, which is important to make not only in terms of a disconnected relationship with yourself, but in terms of any addiction, is that we've at least got two voices in our head. Sometimes some of the gals I work with say, because I'm an eating psychology coach as well, say, I feel like I've got a whole committee in my head. Can anyone relate to that? A whole committee, a whole team in there. So, but we have at least two voices that we need to be most aware of. The tamed mind is that wise inner guide that each of us has, that gets us to think positively and proactively, that gets us to affirm ourselves, that's clear and rational. It's solution-oriented, affirming, and discerning. So this part of your mind is going to offer you genius advice and dependable counsel. This is the part of our mind we want to access on a daily basis. The challenge is we also have an untamed mind. It's been called the ego, the monkey mind, that part of our mind that makes us feel scared and less than and hopeless and frightened, that gets us to worry about the future, feel regret about the past, judge other people, right? Big part of our mind judges other people, judge ourselves harshly, and resist the reality of our current situation rather than saying, here's what I'm dealing with right now, where's my open door? So this bottom line on this voice in your head, it's going to give you negative, irrational, and redundant advice that keeps you feeling stuck and depressed and powerless. And I don't know anybody that has escaped this untamed mind. And the truth is, every single day, we're thinking thoughts that are either from the tamed mind or the untamed mind. And there have been recent studies that have come out that have shown that most of us, our thoughts are 77% driven by worry and fear and self-denigration, disliking ourselves or feeling like someone else is doing it better. So it's absolutely vital to start to make a distinction between what is you, the tamed mind, because who in this room wants to think down here? Nobody. Would everyone like to be up here all the time? That's the key. And the only way I was able to get to the tamed mind was to access the feminine side of who I am, the more loving, gentle side. Now, I will say in advance that I believe that love is a universal term, and I believe it's equally distributed between men and women, and the masculine and the feminine. So with that, I want to go into a model for that will help us to really break down the feminine to these little bite-sized morsels that are going to make it easier for you to recognize what energy you spend more time in. So there was a research study done by two gentlemen. I thought it was interesting that they were gentlemen. And they wrote a book called The Athena Doctrine. And the Athena Doctrine basically talks about the ascendant powers of the feminine side of who you are if you're a man or a leader. So they had 64,000 people take part in a survey, and from 13 different countries. So this is kind of a universal perspective on the feminine. So we're going to play a little game, and those of you at home, I'll say the terms out loud so you can play the game right along with us to determine which quality you think is masculine and which you think is feminine. Okay, so with just a raise of hands, if you think that, and keeping in mind again that love is the universal term, mind, who in here would think that that would be a feminine term? Mind. Okay, a couple people. Dominates, feminine. Engaged. Controls. Forceful. Hard. Giver. Almost every hand's going up, ladies at home. Speaks. Quite a few. Motivating. Okay. Inflexible. Not too many. Resists. Busy. Competitive. Brave. Thinking. Productive. Confronts. Movement. Hierarchical. Protects. Doing. Aggressive. Firm. Plans. Okay, so you'll be surprised to know that these gender qualities, as a result of not only the test by these two lovely gentlemen who wrote the Athena Doctrine, but some of the research I've done, these qualities all represent the masculine side of who we are. Now, the only way it's going to become obvious that that's the case is if we offer the alternative. If you can see the contrasting energy that would be the complement to these masculine qualities. So, again, we talked about love as a universal quality, but generally speaking, the people in this survey and in my own research have said heart more feminine, mind more masculine. Feminine surrenders, masculine controls. So ordinarily we go, well, we women are controlling, right? But what we have to remember, we can be controlling. I will own my controlling side straight out of the gate. But when you see the surrender piece, in contrast to it, it's more obvious that that's a feminine quality, right? And that sometimes what happens is we move into our masculine side in order to survive and take care of business, right? Especially living in a world that we're so busy. We're all multitasking. We're forced to be more in our masculine energies in some capacities. So feminine receiver, masculine giver. This one is always interesting to people because they say, but women are so giving. And I say, right. But that also represents the masculine side of who we are. Because if you think about it, even in terms of receiving a compliment, how hard is it for us women to receive? Really challenging, right? Even in terms of in giving a gift, we give because we're uncomfortable in the feminine energy, which is the receiving energy. In many cases, not all, but each one of you is going to be a little bit different. Each one of you is going to have a different balance between your masculine and feminine energies. So, feminine, intuitive, masculine, instinctive. So intuitive is more what we're thinking. Instinctive is more body-centered, right? If a car's coming at you, you run. You know, that's body-centered. That's more our masculine energy. Collaborative, feminine, competitive, masculine. So we women have stepped more into the masculine, right, in terms of being competitive with each other. In part because we're in the corporate world, what I've come to know to be true and what we talked about in the Feminine Manifesta is that we women are so busy often competing with each other that the men are shooting straight to the top. There's not enough of those mentoring roles and women coming together recognizing that together we are a powerful force for good for each other. Feminine responds, masculine reacts. Feminine unites, masculine dominates. One of the top values of women, according to most marketing studies, is making the world a better place. Men's top value is being top dog. So this is not about making men wrong. This is about assessing where we are as a species. So we can say, all right, well, if that's their primary motivation, how is that playing out in the world in terms of the current conditions, which we all can agree we'd like the world to be a better place. There's way too much unacceptable dysfunction out there. Feminine is calm, masculine restrained. Feminine compassionate, masculine intolerant. Feminine is creative, masculine is productive. This is a big one because our creative side, the parts of us that likes to get dressed up or the parts of us that likes to paint or what have you, all our creative endeavors, oftentimes we're so busy being productive, especially the moms out there that are working, that we're productive. There's no time for the passions that create that yin-yang model where we're balanced. Really challenging to make time for the things that we're passionate about because we're so busy in our masculine energy. Feminine partnership, masculine hierarchical. Feminine being, masculine doing. So part of the thing about this paradigm, the being doing, is that how often do any of you just sit around doing nothing, right? And how many have tried meditation where you're just being, you're not doing anything else? Incredibly hard, right? Because it's so uncomfortable being in that component of our feminine energy. Feminine trust, masculine plans. You can see how the balance works out because if your male engages, which is equally valuable, remember, your masculine plans, your feminine can trust and relax, right? Feminine tender, masculine firm. Feminine subtle, masculine direct. Feminine encouraging, masculine demanding. Feminine emotional, masculine unemotional. Now remember, we're not talking here men and women, right? We're talking masculine, feminine. Feminine inspires, masculine motivates. Feminine feeling, masculine thinking. Feminine soft, masculine hard. And if you have any questions, if any of these are confusing, feel free to ask for a little bit more detail around it. And also, I can make all of this so that you don't have to write them down quickly if you want to just be present to the information being your feminine. If you go to lilyhills.com and just send me a note, and it's Lily, L-I-L-Y, I'll send you the whole presentation so you can share it with your loved ones and have a deeper understanding and maybe even have a list of the qualities so you can decide where you want to be hanging out more. So, where were we? Feminine relaxed, masculine engaged. Feminine compromises, masculine confronts. Feminine accepts, masculine resists. Feminine nurtures, masculine protects. Feminine expressive, masculine impassive. Feminine flexible, masculine inflexible. So the value in this list, is that the last one or do we have one more?
This is the last one.
This is the last one. Okay, thank you, sweetheart. So you can see how these, when you see the contrast, is it easier to see the fullness of the feminine? And can you see how living more in the feminine energy creates that flow to your days, creates that relaxed feeling where, you know, when you go on vacation and you're just fully present and food tastes better and everything's wonderful, your feminine side is absolutely crucial to you having a joyful life. It's not a luxury. It's mandatory if you want to do more than just survive. Feminine is where we can thrive. And in terms of leadership qualities, it's the combination of the two, according to the soft power model, that lead to the strongest leaders. So I like to point out as one of the strongest leaders ever, Nelson Mandela. Now, there was a man who was very strong when he needed to be strong, but he also had a very well-developed feminine side, which is why he's probably one of the few leaders that's going to be seen as a hero and truly a saint in my mind for being such an extraordinary gentleman. But how many of you in this room would say you're spending more time in your masculine energy than your feminine energy? It's across the board. Almost every single seminar I give or any presentation I give, the women say, we're more here than we are in our feminine energy. But the feminine, if you combine it with your masculine, again, they're both equally valuable and equally powerful. That is where you're going to hit that sweet spot with yourself. That's when you're going to feel like you're reaching your full potential. Because if it's imbalanced, it just feels like life is a series of to-dos and tasks rather than a beautiful adventure. And it takes some work to move into the feminine energy. It's not something that sometimes comes naturally if we've been in our masculine energy our entire lives. So I think it's the next one. Oh wait, this is one more. Let me go back through. There's one more, ladies and gentlemen at home. The feminine unites, the masculine dominates. The feminine is powerful, the masculine is forceful. The feminine requests, the masculine demands. The feminine listens, the masculine speaks. This one is always interesting in a group of ladies because they're all going, well, I don't know. I tend to speak more. But have you ever noticed when someone's really listening to you, they're just present to what you're talking about, that there's a feeling that comes over you, a feeling of healing, a feeling of presence, a feeling of being nurtured? That's our feminine side. But we gals, in our desire to support each other, and just because, you know, it's part of our culture, we do tend to sometimes speak more than we listen. But there's huge power in listening. Sometimes that's all someone needs to do for you to completely change your day or your life. Feminine diplomatic, masculine aggressive. So you can see in certain situations, it's appropriate to be aggressive. If your personal boundaries are being overstepped, aggression is necessary. Diplomacy, diplomacy is something that allows you to speak to someone and have yourself be heard at the same time. So it's a very delicate dance, and it's going to be a little bit different for each one of you because each one of you is like a star in the sky. Each one of you is unique. So you're going to be finding your balance, but having the differentiation. How many of you find it valuable to have a differentiation so you can kind of have a deeper understanding of where you're hanging out these days? Feminine democratic, masculine autocratic, feminine empathetic, masculine unmoved, feminine appreciates, masculine acknowledges. So again, with appreciation, we talked earlier about how it's hard to receive a compliment, but how easy is it for us to offer a compliment to other people, right? We're so easy for us women. We tend to be more appreciative. We tend to be more loving with each other, verbally vocal in that way, and how healing that is. So you can see the feminine is a force for good in your own life. The feminine is in integration with the masculine is what allows you to be heard in a way that you might not before. Because who's noticed that when they come from this side of who they are, in a negotiation at work, or with their child, or with their partner, where does it usually get us? I like to call it the road to nowhere. I've been down it quite a few times. I know, I've been down that road. This is not where you get hurt. Where you get hurt is integrating the two. So let's use the example of subtle versus direct. You know, if you're asking someone for something and you're just specifically direct and you go get me that piece of pizza or go get me that chair, How does that go over? Not particularly well. But the feminine is the side that's more subtle, that's more gentle about it, that offers some form of appreciation for who the other person is, because there's no respect if it's just direct. There's that, hey, I really would love to sit down right now because my feet are killing me because I got on my cruel shoes. Would you mind terribly getting me that chair? I'd really appreciate it. It's gracious, you know. It's not weak. Your feminine side is incredibly powerful. And it's not about being passive, but it's about knowing that there are certain times when passive is incredibly strong. But again, it's not described to us. I so wish this model was given to us when we were children, because how powerful would that be? Or a model around how to quiet the untamed mind, right? That's a skill. Taming the untamed mind is a skill that can transform your life. That's why it's so important that you're doing things like what you're doing here, taking time out to learn about yourself, and taking time out to learn about the skill sets, the mental skill sets, and the behaviors that can allow you to have more of what you want. That's what this is about. Having more joy in your life, having the life that you dream of, even giving yourself the space to have that life that you dream of, or to think about how to create that life that you want to, that you most love to have. So why is it hard to embrace the feminine? We haven't been told how to define it. There's no education in it. We're not used to it. I always say that there's kind of a clumsy stage. If you're used to coming from more of your masculine side, sometimes, you know, your first step out there trying to be feminine, you'll feel a little awkward, like, ooh, they're going to think this is fake. You know, I mean, I'm usually not this way. What are they going to think? They're going to think that, you know, I'm not authentic. But it's a practice. It's a practice. And in recognizing that when someone is gentle with you but direct, when someone is coming from their feminine side, does that work better for you guys as well? Combination with the masculine? It always does. It always does. That's where the power is. Another reason we don't use our feminine is because we're not acknowledged for it. Who of us would, you're not going to get an Academy Award for sitting around meditating, right? So you're not going to get a raise for it, right? So there's no acknowledgement. But without it, our lives, again, just feel like we're on a treadmill, a constant state of doing. So being in the feminine means taking the time to quiet the mind, because when you meditate, when you slow down, when you just sit back and you present yourself, you start to find solutions to the largest problems in your life. Because what I know to be true is most of us, and myself included for decades, the elephant in the room is our biggest problem. And if we'd slow down long enough to address that, we would stop doing the dance around it, because we're doing, and the elephant isn't going away, but we're so busy doing, we're not stopping to go, let me get this out, and then I can go straight across the room and get what I want. So taking time out, getting support around the areas that you find challenging, collaborating with other people. And in the workplace, again, you're going to get along so beautifully with your coworkers when you have that balance, because they feel your respect. They feel your caring. And that is what opens up the doors to all types of success, whether that's promotions or getting more clients or just strictly having more fun at work. Wouldn't it be nice if we had more fun at work and we saw each other and we're all happy and how you doing? And it would just be so much more enjoyable. But we have to get out of our head and into our hearts and into our bodies. Because sometimes we're so busy, it's a way we stop ourselves from thinking the thoughts that I'm not good enough, or I'm not going to get it done, or someone's going to do it better than I am. Those thoughts are our most common companions. Challenging to change, not easy to shift a behavior, but when you see the benefits of it, it makes it a little bit easier. We'll be talking about the benefits. And part of us, again, is afraid of trusting this side of who we are. You know, who would we be if we were embodying all those qualities? We always move more towards what we know rather than what we don't know. So again, practicing with it a little bit. If you're not in the habit of going the gentle route, try it. You can try it on strangers until you're ready to use it more with your children. Or being. That is the biggest one, I think, for us ladies. And gentlemen this day and age, because we're all so busy. We live in a hyper-connected world. It's never been like this before. The intensity levels that we're experiencing now, they're unprecedented, which is part of the reason more of us are in our masculine energy. So, women's advancements, never before Before have we as women been holding so much power to shape the future? For the first time in history, women outnumber men as graduates from American colleges. Over 40% of women in the US are also the primary breadwinners in their households, and women now outnumber men in the workforce, even though in positions of power, we all know that it's a very tiny percentage still of women at the highest levels of authority, which in part, as Sheryl Sandberg says in her book, Lean In, it's because we're listening to our untamed mind. It says we can't do it. So you can see how vital it is to slow down. If your untamed mind is busy, and you'll start to notice it, how do you know when you're, does anybody have an idea of how you know when your untamed mind is engaged, that negative voice? How do you know?
Because you're hearing it. I mean,
You're hearing it?
You're reacting that way.
You're reacting to it.
You're feeling defeated.
That's it right there.
You start to feel like you can't do this.
That's exactly right.
Right.
And the word you used that was vital there is feeling. You feel badly when your untamed mind is engaged. Your body, which is your friend, is alerting you when the untamed mind is engaged because you're going to feel some variation of yucky, of uncomfortable, of tense, of worried, of inadequate. So the feeling part of who we are, as we talked earlier, the mind part is what's going, but your mind cannot be trusted because much of it is in the untamed mind. So in slowing down and starting to become more aware of how you're thinking through connecting with your body, rather than doing what many of us do, which I did for 13 years, if I felt an uncomfortable feeling come up, the first thing I do is reach for food. That was automatic, because I felt better for a second. But then my untamed mind would come in and say, I can't believe you ate that. It talked me into it first. Oh, you'll feel better. It's like that bad tour guide. You'll feel better if you eat something. And then, I can't believe you ate that, right? And they're repetitive patterns, because every single day we're thinking between 30 and 60,000 thoughts. And of those thoughts, 90 to 95% of them are repetitious thoughts. Thoughts we thought yesterday and the day before and the day before, unless we're exposed to new information. So if those thoughts are untamed mind generated, you can see why so many of us are feeling so badly, feeling so disempowered. So many of us are on mood medication, and believe me when I say, I think that it is absolutely appropriate in many cases to be on some form of an antidepressant. It's vital. And it all stems from the untamed mind. The more you think negatively, the more you set yourself up for a biology and a psychology that's defeated, and the more you're going to want to use something to shut that out. So the paradox of declining female happiness: women are twice as likely to suffer from depression than they were 40 years ago, and as many as 1 in 7 will be affected by the condition at some point in their lives, more than double the number of men. I'm wondering how they escape that untamed mind. It's really fascinating to me, because that really is where it resides. Their minds are not as busy in terms of the self-defeating story.
What happened was,
among women over 18 looking at themselves in the mirror, research indicates at least 80% of women are unhappy with what they see. And this is happening to our sweet young little girls now, who are all going on diets at the age of 7, 8, 9, 10 now. Women report being less happy today than they were 35 years ago. And 23% of women in their 40s or 50s take antidepressants, a higher percentage than any other group by age or sex. So again, the only place it could come from is our thought processes. Stress and denigration and worry and fear. It sets us up to be so overwhelmed, and no one's teaching us how to stop it. And that happens again through the feminine. Turning the feminine qualities that you give to other people on yourself. Being kinder to yourself. Cutting yourself a break. How many in the room would say you're hard on yourselves? Pretty much every woman. That's what we do. We are hard on ourselves, rather than saying, you know what? Life this day and age, it's not easy. It's not easy. And so we have to cut ourselves a break. Because if we don't, our life will just continue to be challenging in ways that it doesn't need to be. There's going to be some stress in life that's natural, but a lot of it is optional. So what happens when you don't access and integrate your feminine side? You're more prone to addictions, food, work. Work is an addiction too, because you're trying to quiet the voice that's saying you didn't get enough done. Do more, someone's doing more than you, right? Alcohol, drugs, Television, a big way we try and mute out the untamed mind. It's like, oh God, give me a break from this thing. I just don't want to think for a while. And a certain amount of television is okay, but the average American watches about 6 to 7 hours a day. So that's, again, in an effort to quiet that untamed mind, because it's always getting us to think something that we really don't want to think. I mean, 77% of our thoughts negative. I'm surprised more of us aren't on some form of an antidepressant. Some level of depression of anxiety, less effective in the workplace, less intimacy in relationships, more conflict with others, your coworkers, your children, your spouses or partners. And a sense of missing out in life. Sense of missing out in life. I remember before I had my feminine, I started to engage my feminine, and I started to literally become a better friend to myself, because that is what it comes down to. I'm sure all of you in this room would say you're a good friend, right? You're kind to other people, you cut them a break, you're loving in different ways, you suggest that they take better care of themselves, but in terms of doing that to ourselves, we have to make it a goal. We have to support each other as well, because thank God we women are collaborative by nature, because having support in it is crucial. So if you're facing a challenge in your life, if you have an elephant in the room, if you make that number one starting today, then that elephant will go away. But if you keep dancing around it, it can be there for a lifetime. I know many people have spent a lifetime not dealing with their biggest challenge because their mind keeps them too busy. I don't have time. I don't have the money, right? If you became a life or death situation, or if I said to you, if you handle your largest problem, you start getting some form of support or love, I'm going to give you $10 million. Who would do it? All of us would be like, let's do this. But when you think about it, the quality of your life and living in joy every day, that's priceless. That's worth more than $10 million. So that's why I always suggest to everybody, I got where I am today because of extraordinary women who held my hand and helped me along the way and guided me. That's how I got to be where I am today. And that's why I tell every lady, get yourself some loving support. It will start changing your life from the very first meeting. So, the feminine, it's what keeps you connected to you, the strongest, most loving, and powerful version of you, independent of external factors, like what you look like, what you own, or what you've achieved. Isn't that nice to know that it's not, you are not your body, you are not your accomplishments, you're not your bank account, you're not what you possess. You're the person living inside of your body, so it's important to take excellent care of it by getting enough sleep, right? Resting it, nurturing it, excellent foods, and fun. Absolutely crucial to your mental well-being. That's a whole nother story about the power of your fun side, your childlike side, because that's what makes every day more enjoyable. We'll have to come back to do that one, because that's a fun day, I can assure you. So benefits to integrating masculine and feminine, you flow through your days rather than power through them, a stronger sense of balance, higher levels of peace, less stress. Everybody in here want less stress? Higher level of fulfillment, healthier relationships, and your personal evolution, the ultimate benefit. Because when you think of it, can you imagine a world where every single one of us was integrating our masculine and feminine sides? Can you see how the world would change overnight? Just by us doing that, just by us being the best and highest and most loving, powerful versions of ourselves, and that can only come with the balance between the two. So in terms of leadership, and this is leadership not just in the workplace, but leadership at home, transformational leadership, it's androgynous because it incorporates culturally masculine and feminine behaviors. So when you're dealing with your children, when you're dealing with your partner, when you're dealing with anyone in your life, know that you will be a leader. You will be more heard. You will be more respected, and you'll be more likely to receive what it is you're asking for if you've got that merger between the two. So the androgynous mixing of the masculine and feminine means that skill in this contemporary way of leading does not necessarily come naturally. It may require some effort and thought. So this is something worth investing time in. I've got some ladies who have started groups of talking about it a little bit more, talking about how hard it is, and then setting goals around it. even if it's taking 5-minute breaks in the middle of the day to just walk outside and look at the sky and do nothing and think about nothing but what you want to think about. Not work related. For those of you that are mothers, what's constantly on your mind is usually children, your children, right? Because you love them and care about them so much. But just you, independent of any of those roles, will bring out the strongest side of who you are. So this is one of my favorite quotes. If ever the world sees a time when women shall come together purely and simply for the benefit of mankind, it will be a power such as the world has never ever known. And I would add to that and say that if ever the world should see a time when all of us start to integrate our masculine and feminine, all of us learn how to tame that untamed mind so that we can come from the best of who we are, it's not the big things that can change the world, or they can, but they're less likely. It's the little things that we do every single day to bring more presence to our lives, to bring more of those feminine qualities, to balance out our masculine side. And how much more time do we have?
We have 12 minutes.
12 minutes, okay. So one of the things that I would love to do is to kind of support you guys in having an understanding, a deeper understanding of the tamed versus the untamed mind, so that you don't fall prey to yours. So, and please feel free, again, I love questions, so feel free to interrupt me if you have any questions about anything that I'm talking about. So, all of the addictive qualities in our life, anything that feels addictive to you, something that you feel like you can't stop, that's driven by the untamed mind. So as we talked about, one of the ways to access the tamed mind is to shut down the untamed mind. And the way we shut down the untamed mind is, first of all, as we talked about earlier, acknowledging that you're in your untamed mind. That's first and foremost. And one of the things that I do to acknowledge that is I use what I call the out loud voice. Because sometimes when we're going about our day, we'll think internally, oh, I'm thinking a negative thought, but there's no way to stop it. Because the untamed mind, again, it's like a force. Even if you try and get out of it, trust me, it takes some time to overcome the untamed mind. What I like to say is it's like learning how to play the piano. You're not going to sit down and play a song at the piano overnight. It takes practice. It's the same thing with the untamed mind. So don't expect it to go away right away, even with these practices. But if you practice it every day, it is like a musical instrument. You can shut it down faster. So of those 30 to 60,000 thoughts that are rolling in, and the negative ones, they're involuntary. So you don't have control over the ones that come in. But what I like to say is you do have control over how long they stay. So it's kind of like a negative thought shows up at your door and knocks, right? The question is, are you going to be on the other side saying, well, come on in. Well, yes, come on in, sit down. What is it you want to tell me? Oh, I didn't do enough today? You know, she's doing it better. But it's so incredibly engaging because it's right in your head. So it's really hard to think, that's not my thought. That's not even my thought. Because let me ask you, we talked earlier, how many of you would like to be out of the untamed mind? How many of you would prefer not to think negatively, right? So that's how you know it's not your thought. If it shows up and it's a thought that makes you feel badly and you don't like it and you want it to go away, then it's one of the involuntary ones. So in our heads, our software packages with the same story rotating over and over and over again about the circumstances of our lives. I don't like that my husband does that. When my child does that, it drives me crazy. That coworker's doing this. I should lose weight. Same story, same thoughts every single day. So in order to change your life, you have to change what? Your story, your thoughts. So think of story one as the untamed mind. The untamed mind is always, again, talking about the future. What if that happens? What if I can't pay my rent, right? Creating misery in the now and closing the doors to having you look at options for getting a different job where you can make more money or coming up with different ideas to actually create more abundance in your life. So story one is what I like to call the misery maze. Once you're in it, it's hard to get out. So I recommend stopping it at the door as soon as possible. It's like the difference between putting out a forest fire versus just, a little campfire. If you get it early, you can stomp that baby out. But once it's taken off, it's completely overwhelming. And it's much harder to get back to what I call story 2, which is your vision for what you do want. So in story 2, and I recommend to everybody, is to write out a vision for what it is you want most in your life. Story 2 is, I want to be stress-free. I want to be living at my natural weight. I want to be happy with my partner. I want to be promoted at work. I want to feel more joy every single day. I want more connection with my children. Whatever it is you want most, you want to write it out in tremendous detail. The more detail, the better. And recognize that story 1 is the tamed mind. And in story 1 are your goals, setting goals. I want to have this many new customers, or this many new clients, or I want to have this experience. Get detailed with it. And then remember that story 1, which is all of our personal history, and part of the challenge with story 1 is that there's some truth in it. So let's say story 1 is, my husband's always cranky, or my husband doesn't help me out around the house, right? That's in story 1, the thoughts that make you miserable. There's truth in story 1. There's enough truth to make it sticky. And because it's so emotions management based, it's so emotionally based, it's easy to stay there. But when you recognize that if you stay in story 1, it prevents you from having everything that's in story 2. So all the good stuff, because there is no value in the untamed mind. There's no value in thinking negatively. And that's what it is. Story 1 is all negative. There's no value in it. Now, being discerning and assessing the circumstances of your life that aren't working for you, that's a huge value. But that's very different than negative. That's assessing. That's tamed mind. My husband is not treating me in a way that's loving, or I'm not getting along with this particular coworker. Story 2 is, what's the solution, right? Where's the open door here? How can I shift in terms of my communication style so I can create more joy? Because anytime you want the other person to change, again, as wonderful as that would be for our husbands to do exactly what we want them to do, and our children to just snap to attention immediately, and our coworkers to do exactly what it is we prefer them to do. It usually, I would say, the overwhelming majority of the cases, unless you're strictly in your masculine and you're threatening, it's not going to happen. And you don't want to be in your masculine anyway, because that's not the best of who you are. And nobody feels good after lambasting somebody else. We feel better when we can communicate from, again, direct but soft. So in terms of a coworker or your partner at home, it's starting out with something feminine. Start out with, what I love about you is that you're so great with the kids, or you're so great with this computer programming part, and if you could also support me in this area, these are the benefits to you. Can you see how different that would be than staying in the problem, staying in story 1, staying in the untamed mind? When you are coming from your untamed mind with somebody else, it's going to be an automatic that they're going to come from their untamed mind. So use that as leverage. Use that as leverage to go, all right, I'm in the story, I'm in the complaint. Yes, there's some truth in it, but it doesn't, I can loop here forever. I can loop forever in the story. Story 2 is where freedom resides, because I have trained myself now after years to think, I don't want to think that thought. And I say out loud, that's not my thought, I don't want that thought. What do I want to think about? What it is that I want? Untamed mind takes you to what you don't want. Tamed mind takes you to what you do want. So the question is, how long do you want to suffer? Right? Only suffering in the untamed mind. Only suffering. Only some form of misery. So tamed mind is where you're set free. And the tamed mind gives you access to what I call story 3, which is the best version of who you are. So if you train in jumping from story 1 to story 2 enough, you become that beautiful balance between your masculine and feminine side. You become joyful every day. And it's not like there won't be stresses and things that come up, but for the most part, your thoughts are going to keep you on a natural high. They're going to keep you feeling good. So just think to yourself, what story am I in right now? Because when you're the best version of yourself, that is one of the best feelings in the world. All of us want to be the best version of ourselves, right? The most loving, the most giving, the most kind, the most powerful, the most inspiring, the most empowering. If you're at story 2 and story 3, that's when your life is going to start to just blossom in ways that you can't imagine. I can't believe that I was that young woman who 2-3 times a day would make myself sick because I couldn't stop my untamed mind. And now to be where I am, every single day, I have so much gratitude. I feel like most of my thoughts, I'm faster at jumping from story 1 to story 2 than ever before. And I turned 50 a few weeks ago, and I have just a funny story because this one young man came up to me. I went to a concert, and he had a couple of drinks, and I was there with my girlfriend and her daughter, and he kind of walks up to me. He's a little wobbly, and he looks at me and he goes, "You're one of the most attractive old ladies I've ever seen." And I was like, "Thank you." But fortunately, I'm grateful to know that my value doesn't reside in what I look like. It's who I am. And I'm a kind woman, and I think it's one of the most undervalued qualities in the world, because that is what would change the world overnight. Kindness in all of us. Literally, if we had one International Kindness Day, and it was a requirement that we were all kind, think about that, the power of that. I like it. I think we should do it. I got your back on that. I will be your rooting section. We'll do it together. We'll collaborate. So think about that, ladies. That is really, you don't have to be anything other than the kindest, most loving, powerful version of yourself. That's going to help to transform the world. And the world is in desperate need of all of us. So thank you for taking the time to come and listen today. It's been a joy, and looking at all your sweet faces, it makes my job so joyful when I look out there and I see smiles, and you've all been just really exceptional. So thank you so much, and if you want any of the information that was shared today, go to lilyhills.com, just send me a little note. I'd love to hear from you and love feedback on the presentation. If there's anything I can do to improve it, I'd love that. So thank you very much.